I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. Today we're going to review the third album from the indie band Smith Westerns, entitled Soft Will. Soft Will is very aptly named, don't you think? I mean, it's soft and there's will there, and this whole thing sounds like reluctance. Like they actually did a very big change in their sound, I think, as far as the mood is concerned between Diet Blonde, which came out in 2011, and now. And Soft Will, it just embodies this. Where Diet Blonde had this energy to it, in their self-titled debut had this energy to it. They kind of rocked out at times. It was much more like indie rock. I would call this, it's turned a different direction as far as the mood and atmosphere is concerned. You still get a lot of the washy guitar effects. The production is not the strong suit. It's almost lo-fi at times. But I definitely feel like their mood and attitude has changed in this album.
Completely. And they set it up that way from the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, let's compare just the first tracks alone from both of those albums. Diet Blonde, you've got the first track is Weekends, and the first thing you hear is this really catchy George Harrison style guitar riff.
I can't get it out of my head still.
That is a great song. And then here, which actually both the first tracks on both these albums were track picks of mine, some of my favorites. So you start with that, and it's this upbeat, like I said, George Harrison style guitar line. Really puts a smile on your face, gets you in the mood for the rest of the album. Here, it starts right away with the vocals and a very kind of introspective, philosophical lyric. Or series of lyrics in the beginning of the song, and then the rest of the instrumentals come in and everything. But right there, it tells you that the focus of the band has really changed.
Yes.
They've gone from focusing on those kind of poppy, bright instrumentals to really thinking about the overall sound and the message that you're getting from the music. And when I say message, I don't just mean in the lyrics. I also mean in the mood that the instrumentals are conveying and how they're supporting that the whole time.
Yeah, there's definitely a cohesion amongst this album, amongst the tracks on this album when it comes to mood. Now, what I want to point out right away is I felt like there is just absolutely no edge to most of these tracks, which is different than some of their previous works. I feel like this album in particular, just because they went for this new mood, almost kind of like the change that Band of Horses did when they went to Infinite Arms. Yeah. Like I feel like they just they took this change, but they didn't plan out the effects, the net effects of the album experience and the album listening experience, because you have this washy production that makes a lot of the guitar parts, the good things that they're doing on guitar, kind of be in the background, so you don't get that effect. It's not quite as stark as what I would have liked to have seen. And then on top of it, just the parts themselves don't lend themselves, the transitions between verses and chorus, that doesn't lend themselves to be very dynamically strong. It's pretty flat throughout the entire time. So for those of you who, didn't grow up in high school band and jazz band like Tom and I did, like dynamics are what makes a song in your face. It's what relates the intensity to the listener. And without dynamics, it's really hard for there to be any edge, for these songs to be catchy at all. I mean, you really need something to imprint in your mind, and dynamics are one device that really helps that helps the band accomplish that. And I just don't think that they attacked this at all on Soft Will.
No, I totally agree. You could tell it was more of a track-by-track approach. They wrote the songs individually, and they're decent songs on their own, but it's kind of you put them together, and as we've said tons of times before, it's one of those where the sum of the parts is less than each individual part. They don't work off each other extremely well. There are some moments, I think that track 3 glossed into track 4, I guess it Roman numeral for 23, where you have just that kind of instrumental track, kind of meanders into this Pink Floyd kind of instrumental jam.
Very repetitive, and it does have a jam feel to it.
Yeah, so I think that breaks up the album fairly nicely, and there's a little bit of flow there, but then it doesn't really transition into anything. It just goes into some more songs that sound somewhat familiar.
Yeah, and I personally felt like track 5, Foolproof, and track 6, White Oath. I felt like those two tracks were nice tracks, nicely written, and presented the band sound in a way that I had never heard them before. A much more mature presentation than I've heard. But then after that, I just don't feel like they finished this album very strong. It's just more of the same. And honestly, I felt like a lot of the guitar parts were kind of repeated. They didn't really reinvent the guitar parts in a way.
No, yeah.
Every once in a while, it's not quite as this album's just more tepid. There's you know, on the previous release, you had lots of those crazy guitar parts that just got caught in your head, which they were produced very loudly, so you got a lot of dynamics just based on those sweet guitar lines. And on this album, you don't get those quite as often. They're here, but they're kind of turned down in the mix, and they're less frequent, to be sure. And I just felt like the album suffered because of that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's one of those things where with this album, I think that in overall approach to the songwriting on a song-by-song basis, you're right. I think they did mature a lot.
Sure.
They're showing a lot more depth in their songs, but at the same time, when I think back to Diet Blonde, while I wasn't overly enthused about that album on the whole, its highlights really jumped out at me, and I didn't get those highlights.
No, the highlights, the strong songs aren't as strong, but you know, the weak songs aren't quite as weak.
Yeah, I agree.
It just makes the whole thing a little bit, you know, just bland overall.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really flow as an album listener, at least didn't for me. You know, in the future, I would like to see, I love that this band is taking risks in changing their sound and experimenting a little bit. I wish that they would take it to the next level, and I'm definitely excited to see what they do in the future. I feel like that while this album has some really good qualities to it as an album, it just has some flaws that keep me from really attaching to it.
I totally agree.
Therefore, I'm going to go 67.
I'm going 65.
66 from us means that it's a good album with some issues. You guys might want to check it out if you've heard of the artist or familiar with this genre. Definitely something that I feel that some of you guys will really like this album, and some of you might think along the same lines as what Tom and I did on Soft Will. So if you guys would please leave us a comment discussing your thoughts or concerns with this album, we'd love to talk with you guys about it at www.velocitiesandmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesandmusic. As always, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and make sure you guys are letting us know what albums from 2013 you've been into and want to see us review, because that's where we get our review list every week. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Moving Music Critique Forward.